Welcome to your Digital Mentor podcast. Coming to you from the Welcome Genome campus, I am Dr. Alice Matimba, and with me is our esteemed guest, Dr. Martin Dougherty. Welcome, Martin.
Thank you,
It
Alice.
is indeed an honor to have you on our podcast, and I'll let you introduce yourself shortly. So in this episode, and following our podcast themes of mentoring and career development, we will discuss a relatively new mentoring phenomenon. Well, it's more new to me, but I guess more familiar to many others already. So we'll be discussing reverse mentoring. Previously in our episodes, we've had just more like interview style, but this episode will have a slightly different format, presenting a conversation between myself and Martin about our experiences in a reverse mentorship program that we've been running over the last couple of months, where I was actually Martin's mentor and he was my mentee. So to put this in context, we should probably introduce ourselves, right, Martin? And I say you go first.
Yeah, no problems. Thanks, Alice. So I'm Martin Dougherty. I'm Chief Operating Officer of the Wellcome Sanger Institute and the Wellcome Genome Campus. And basically, I have the pleasure of leading all of our kind of senior operational leadership team. And that's from, all the kind of basic business operations through to the operation of campus, all the way through to oversight of scientific operations. And I'm blessed to have the most amazing group of senior leaders that are helping running the institute, running the campus. And that's the role that I have at the institute.
I'll introduce myself. So I am Alice Matimba and I am the Overseas Courses Manager. I'm responsible for development of courses that we run in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, coming from the Wellcome Genome Campus and as part of the Connecting Science program of advanced courses where we focus on training development and professional development for researchers and healthcare professionals. One of the reasons why I happen to be sitting here with Martin is because we decided to give a bit of a spiel about our reverse mentoring. We started a couple of months ago. And I think some of you might be wondering what is reverse mentoring. And I will let Martin take a lead on answering this question because he's the one who invited me to this program. And I did the smart thing of agreeing because why would you turn down an invitation to mentor your COO, right? So Martin.
Thanks, Alice.
I have to admit, that was the first time I heard about the reverse mentoring and from you. And so when you recruited me, would you like to explain what is reverse mentoring?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll just give a bit of background as well. So over the last 12 months or so, I've been doing some personal development, some quite intensive personal development, actually. It's basically a stakeholder-centered kind of feedback and feed-forward process. And I've been working on 2 or 3 aspects of my leadership with respect to that, with colleagues at the Institute, in scientifics, in sort of management operations, etc., with scientists and with people that lead on operations, and with my coach down in London, Jonathan Bowman-Perks. And so I've been thinking a lot about my own personal development. And a long time ago, literally sort of 15, 20 years ago, I had a conversation with a consultant. And what he said to me has always kind of stuck in my mind, which is the higher you kind of go up in an organization, the less you actually know about the nuts and bolts of how it operates. And you're therefore much more reliant on the people around you to give you that honest feedback. And earlier this year, we've been doing quite a lot of work at the Institute around equality, diversity and inclusion, all related to sort of Athena Swan, but lots of kind of policy development, lots of things that we've been thinking about at the Institute. And we also have been doing some development work with an organisation called Frost Inclusive. And that is about, understanding our position around equality and diversity. So there were lots of threads coming together that got me thinking. And I'd come across reverse mentoring as part of those conversations. what I really liked about the concept of reverse mentoring is you get to see, the organisation through somebody else's eyes, and it's somebody who is a bit more junior in the organisation. And with reverse mentoring, they often say the best thing to do is find somebody that is different from you, and has a different background, has different perspectives, and is brave enough to step up to the mark, like you have, Alice, and engage in the conversations that we've had, which I'm sure we'll get into a bit of detail. And really, it was just finding someone where the chemistry worked, where they would be willing to kind of share their experiences and give me those insights, their kind of personal insights, if you like, to the organisation. All of that then this year was flavoured with a number of different things. Obviously with the pandemic, and then in the middle of the year, the issues of Black Lives Matter. Equality, diversity are absolutely kind of central to how I operate and how I think. So when Alice kind of volunteered, in reality, rather than me kind of recruiting her, she started to have some conversations. Alice started to have some conversations with people around the organisation about Black Lives Matter. And really, that's kind of how we connected, really. You reached out to the director and to a few other people in the organisation, and you and I had a conversation, and really it kind of developed from there, I think, really. And I think we've had, very positive engagement since then.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's definitely was a bit of a brave thing to do. I might not have done this other times, but I think, when you have that calling, when you have that feeling that this is the right thing to do, this is the right thing to start having those conversations with people high up there. And I'm so glad that you open up for, to hear from us, to hear my voice being the voice of many others. And I'm really pleased that, we've actually achieved quite a lot. And I guess we'll cover a bit more of that later. And I think one of the things that, just to add to Martin's point about why this reverse mentoring approach is really quite beneficial. I thought of it as creating that culture of cross-organizational change, where you can exchange at all levels, at all we have various disciplines in the institute. And engage in topical issues where, you use that to have more understanding of how people think, people from the different disciplines, different departments, different levels, how they're thinking, how they work, and how all the different actions are interconnected, from all the different teams and so forth. I've really enjoyed this interaction. We kind of jumped on the bandwagon of talking about racism and Black Lives Matter and those kinds of things. So what were your expectations actually? What did you have any expectations to start, or were you just exploring this to see how it would go?
I think it's fair to say that I think both of us kind of came into this with quite an open mind, actually, and I think that was kind of part of what helped at the very start. We didn't necessarily come with preconceived ideas of what we'd get out of it, what the outcomes would be. We just it was quite a natural process. I think a lot of it was about developing the trust between us. And being able to kind of, talk about these things openly, and that takes a little bit of time. And I think, having the right chemistry between us and developing that sense of trust was really important at the very start. And then it became clear, I think, over our first few conversations, what I was going to get out of this. And it became clear that just understanding your experiences, your perspectives, were going to kind of change the way I think about these things. Another, and I think we spoke about it at the time, another lens that that I was kind of, thinking and observing the Black Lives Matter issues is that, I am a special constable, I am a police officer, and I am, trained in kind of controlling riots, and actually that gave me, a particular set of perspectives. And actually, through our conversations, you challenged that thinking and made me really, stretch my thoughts, quite significantly as part of our dialogue. And quite often you'd send me some homework, which was really helpful. Some of the videos you sent me, some of the documents that we kind of discussed consequently, I think was a natural process. We kind of didn't design it like that, but it kind of really helped our dialogue and helped my thinking as well, to be honest.
And I think that was part of, the fun part, which was I would give you some homework and things to look at before the next meeting. You did the same to me too. I also had a chance, it kind of also gave me a chance to reflect and openly discuss what I was thinking, what I had been maybe experiencing for a long time without getting that audience that would hear me out. So amongst sort of like, the what could I say, like our community, say, as a Black woman from Africa, obviously these are things that we talk about, with other Black women as well. But I never had a chance to talk about these things openly and freely to other people, like yourselves. And so it helped me to reflect on how some of these things that we always push to the back of our minds, and you kind of have to, you learn to live with some of the experiences, and how that actually in the end affects your personal and career development, and even your mental health. But then we tend to, just live with it. So it was a very exciting opportunity to open up and to be talking to a different audience than, sort of like talking amongst ourselves about these issues and these problems, and bringing that awareness to yourselves and hopefully and obviously within the organization. And some of the discussions that we had, just around the initiatives that are ongoing in on campus in terms of, the organization, the culture. You mentioned earlier that at the beginning of the year, you've been looking a lot more into these things, how to improve the culture. So, the environment is great, where we work is great, but it can be even better, right? So some of those initiatives on behaviors, EDI, it was, I think it was timely, right? It was really a timely, interaction for us.
No, I agree entirely. And, the interesting thing, Alice, is that, I can read any number of books, to kind of understand, the impact of racism or being a woman in science, or, the concept of intersectionality and all that, how these things kind of come together to kind of shape lives. But it's not until you actually spend a little bit of time talking to somebody who's kind of experienced these sorts of things, so you really have kind of brought that to life for me in a way that, I've never kind of experienced before, because I've just not had the opportunity to talk to somebody like that. And that was one of the reasons I was really excited about, the things that we were doing. The little conversations we had around, the microaggressions related to, potentially to racism and these sorts of things that, that you were able to kind of talk to me about. A lot of this, you kind of know that these things are there, but you're not an observer of them. You're not sighted on these things. And actually, some of the things that you told me, shocked me actually a lot, and it kind of makes me want to redouble our efforts to kind of make sure we have an organisation that is inclusive, and we can be, a kind of shining light of what needs to happen to, to have an organisation where it doesn't matter, where you come from or what culture you are or what gender you are. It doesn't matter. Actually, you've got a place where you can be the best that you can be. And that genuinely excites me. And then the other thing that we spoke about that I found fascinating was just some of your perspectives around, this kind of relationship, if you like, this kind of difficult historical relationship between, black people and white people, and what that means for somebody.
And colonialization.
And colonialization and all of these sorts of components, which, again, I know I know some of these things. I've read about these things, but it's not until you sit down with somebody and you kind of appreciate the long historical legacy that we're kind of living through. And some of the conversations we had around kind of American history, and sort of post First World War and almost like the race wars that were happening in the States, where those legacies kind of linger on now. These are all things that, was kind of new to me. And you set my homework, and actually it's fascinating going away and reading about some of those components. So that really has, broadened, my thinking and broadened my horizons. So thank you for that, Alice.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess, like you said, it's just having that space to discuss, about these things more openly and, without judgment, without, sort of trying to blame everyone and everyone else. And taking that perspective from people like myself, and also for me, having that opportunity to educate you and to bring that awareness is it's quite it's quite fulfilling, because I think that these things things are around racism and even all the equality and all these issues, they've been going on for such a long time, despite all the efforts that we hear about. And I think what was quite clear at the time is that whatever has been happening, or whatever we all claim to have been doing, just wasn't working. It was not working as effectively as it should. So, I think yourself and obviously your team are coming together and trying to understand these things and integrate them into, what we do on campus, and how research actually is not just about producing scientific work, but to also take some of these things, social things, quite seriously, because certainly and enabling people to develop those qualities. So starting from yourself, and hopefully this spreads through across the organization. It was exciting for me. Of course, I wasn't sure whether, I was doing the right thing, I was saying the right things. It was the first time I had a chance to speak to someone higher up in the executive, educating you, about my experiences and my views. But you made it clear, that this was a safe space to talk about anything. And honestly, that will give a much, much better result than when you fear that, maybe I might say something that might come back and haunt me, or I might lose my job because I said something. So I think you created a way for I think other colleagues on campus to be able to see things differently, and to kickstart these conversations, and you showed a genuine interest actually in tackling these issues and knowing more about all this racism, colonialism, and I have to admit that part of I come from a British colonized country, and I kind of related that colonial hangover that still hangs over all of us. So it's not just amongst the white people, it's still amongst the black people, all the other non-white communities. So it's still very much affecting people's behaviors and thinking and even people's confidence till today, despite the fact that we know about these things. And so your approach to try and get to know more in order to do something about it, that's what I'm looking forward to. We need to see more of, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to change? How are we going to change our behaviors?
That conversation we had that day about colonialism and the kind of just the lingering legacy on culture and behaviors, that actually was the thing that shocked me the most, actually. It really rocked me to the core, because I had no concept that those things were so patent, actually, and the legacy was having kind of, even now, such massive impact on people. And that's kind of when I realised that you spoke then about feeling comfortable to be able to talk about these things. The term I would use is kind of creating that right space of psychological safety to be able to do that. And actually, until we kind of, create that sense of psychological safety at the right level for people to be able to engage in those conversations, it's obviously been successful between you and I, which is brilliant. Until that bubble of psychological safety is able to kind of, move its way through an organisation or move its way through, a country or whatever that looks like, I don't think we'll ever get away from that legacy, because, people find it very difficult to talk about these things, and it's ingrained on all sides of the of the equation, and that's the one thing that has really stood out in my mind, to be honest, Alice. It really rocked me, that.
I think the issues that I think everyone agrees that changing things or getting, moving away from that, it will take time, but it starts somewhere. And it also starts from, that reflection that what we've been doing all along is probably just not being effective, and perhaps thinking of different ways, such as, these kinds of one-to-ones where we have those honest discussions with the right people in the right positions that can try to drive that change. And I think that should be, that will, so that it resonates even more across the organization. And because what has been happening for a long time, and I think I did mention earlier, is the fact that these are things that people talk about amongst themselves. So people that are feeling, or maybe they're feeling a bit marginalized, or they feel they're not quite fitting, they'll usually find each other and they talk amongst themselves, but they don't, so nothing happens. So this really opens up the door for that, for that much more, knowing more, learning more. And then, of course, with the right people, knowing means that something will be done about it. So.
Yeah, and at our level, that is around the right organisational culture. It's about the right research culture that we've also spoken about this as well. And
yes,
some of that is the kind of the form and function. It's the policies that are in place and these sorts of things. But it's also about the people that are leading, the people that are managing. Making sure that that they have the right skills to think about these things, to have the right conversations. It's well understood, isn't it, that in senior academic roles across the globe, that women are underrepresented, in those very senior roles. But when you start to delve down into kind of BAME representation within science, there are very similar sets of challenges at play there, and I think this is something that will absolutely, is coming to the fore, has come to the fore. But we need to link this to conversations around research culture. And that we are very actively pursuing, at the Institute. So, the conversations that we've had, not the detail of them, I've spoken to our board, Genome Research Limited board, about the sorts of things that we've been doing, and all the other kind of activities that we've been thinking about at the Institute, and to a person, really roundly supportive of the sorts of activities that you and I have been thinking about, and then kind of going to the next step beyond that, because I know I've got a lot out of what we've been talking about, Alice, and that's the whole point of kind of reverse mentoring.
Yeah. I hope you did.
Absolutely. So, 10 out of 10. But, at some point, and we've already spoken about this, is, what's my role in sponsoring you, within the organisation, within my networks, et cetera, because that then becomes, a real two-way thing where, I've got a huge amount out of our interactions, Alice, and I think it's only fair that, that you benefit from that as well. And I know that you've been to one or two of the meetings that I chair and these sorts of things. And I think in 2021, we'll be doing more of that. I think that is a very important next step that we need to carry on with. And then the other thing that I think I've really gotten something out of, actually, no, I think the organisation has gotten something out of, is when we've had conversations about new initiatives at the Institute, like our new behavioural competency framework that's been rolled out this year, which I think is a great thing. But me having, 15 minutes with you just to get, your perspectives on that, with your experience, your background, and to be able to kind of flavour my thinking on, the impact of that at an organisational level, I think is a great example about how reverse mentoring, how the mentor can actually then, support directly the organisation through the person that they're mentoring. I think that was also a very powerful thing that we did as well.
Yeah, and I think I actually took these things a bit more seriously than I usually do, because as per your request, I had to give you feedback on what I think about it. Because previously I would take it half seriously. Why? Because maybe I just thought, well, it feels like everyone else takes it half seriously or not seriously at all anyway. But you inviting me to review and to give feedback made me really study these things and have a better understanding, and also just that realization that perhaps having maybe more, I think a key thing that I fed back was having a bit more inclusive approach in the development of some of these materials, so that the materials are really speaking to the diverse people that we have on campus, so that we're not so that we give examples that actually relate to what people, a wider range of people actually experience. So to me, that was probably the most, the most important thing, was to build more on that. But I mean, the rest of it has been such a, I think for me, it's been such an important exercise for myself, and also even in my position where I'm starting up into, in the roles that I'm in, and working with my team, and, having people reporting to me. It's been a very important aspect of my professional development as well. So, and I think other people will see it that way, as, there's more of this being rolled out and a lot more feedback being requested, and make it even better.
It's really positive, isn't it, Alice, actually?
Yeah.
Perhaps between us we might start a little movement.
Yeah, we should. We definitely should, I think. And I mean, I think we learned a lot, right, Martin? What are some of the things that you really feel, this, I really learned this, and I really will have sort of like the most memorable out of our discussions?
Yeah, so there are a few things. I mentioned one of them, which was your kind of perspective and the conversation we had around colonialism and the kind of resonating impact. That really hit me. And then there was a video you sent me that really also captured my imagination. And this was a black woman in America in the middle of the Black Lives Matter riots, talking about the riots, talking about the break in social contract, and what that means. And I hadn't really thought about it in that way before, actually. So that really made some neurons fire in my brain, I have to say. And I did a little bit of reading around that. And, some of the kind of the history associated with that. So that really chimed. And I can, and that was interesting, because that also sort of, from my lens as a police officer, looking at kind of people rioting and what does that mean, that kind of challenged my normal thinking about that, actually. I think in the middle of this just amazing kind of tirade that this woman was giving to the camera, she was talking about this breaking of social contract. She was talking about, people rioting and people stealing things because they have nothing. It's the only opportunity that they have. And just thinking about it from that perspective, irrespective of whether you individually think that's right or wrong, I think it does challenge your thinking somewhat. So that really kind of... and then the other thing that really resonated with me are, some of the conversations you and I had around, microaggressions. It kind of doesn't matter the reasons why the individual is giving those microaggressions. It's the feeling that it has on the recipient that's the most important thing, actually. And that really chimed. And when you sent me the video to look over about black people's experience in UK academia, I think it was one of the trade unions that had created this video. That really kind of solidified that thinking. And I passed that video on to our board of management, which is kind of all of our senior scientists, et cetera, for them just to spend a few minutes kind of thinking about that. So it's interesting, isn't it? So the conversations that you and I have had have already, had impacts elsewhere within the organisation.
Been passed on.
I mean, you might not have even known that, but, I think they have had already some kind of broader type impacts.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful, actually. In fact, that's what we're hoping should be happening, and just bringing that broader awareness across the different groups on campus. And it's even better if it's at that level, because again, like I said, if the right people know, then then they will do the right thing, and they will try to make the changes that are necessary. I learned beyond obviously giving you all the advice, and although as a mentor, I also learned a lot. I learned, it's like you're running a small country in my view, doing all those things. I mean, dealing with all aspects of, operations and that kind of stuff. It just seems so, so massive. But, just thinking even in terms of how it was beneficial to me it made me think more ambitiously, actually. Like, how can I rise up, in my career and one day become a chief of an organization? So it makes it reachable, So whereas I might have thought, this could never be something that I could ever do. But it actually made me see this even as a possibility. And I know that obviously I'm far much more modest and realistic than that, at least currently. But most of all, I felt encouraged that, just having those meetings with you, and even not just you, but I think I had meetings with other people in the higher positions. It made it seem more accessible, and it made me feel I need to see it as something that I should be working towards, as opposed to feeling that where I am is the end of it. So it's been really, really beneficial in thinking about how to shape my career. I mean, not necessarily in those specific roles, but just thinking that, you can keep improving, you can keep going up, you can get there, but you just need to, talk to the right people, get into the right circles, find ways that you can, people who can help you to get there. And that's been quite inspirational to me. So I thought, well, despite the fact that you're sort of dealing with all this pandemic crisis and all that stuff, you were still, a very approachable person, making time for regular chats and that kind of stuff. And again, that actually adds to the fact that, you were accessible, you were reachable. And that's something that is definitely quite beneficial. The more people see this, that, people in your positions are actually available, are actually reachable, it will be beneficial for everyone in our teams, so that we're not just stuck in our own circles. And
right. No, I agree with you entirely. And again, this speaks volumes of that concept of psychological safety, and having a space where people just feel comfortable to be able to talk about issues, actually. So I think I think we should continue this, Alice, actually, because you're a very good mentor, and I think we should perhaps set ourselves some homework for 2021, and I think the homework question in my mind would be, how do we, amplify, what you and I have done over the last few months, more broadly across the organisation. So I think we should set ourselves a piece of homework like that, and we should continue in 2021, and we should try and start a little movement at the Sanger Institute. So where perhaps reverse mentoring and then advocacy and sponsorship, sponsoring become the kind of norm within the organisation. I think that would be a really great thing to do in 2021. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm probably still a bit right at the sort of like basic, what can I say, appreciation, where my message to people is, if you are invited to be a reverse mentor, take it. It is the most rewarding experience personally. And I think I'm still, just excited about being in this kind of program, and I see so much potential beyond this, not just for me, but actually even just for other people like me, or even other people at the levels that I am. It is a rewarding experience, and I would really jump on it if that opportunity does arise. So I think that's my take-home message. And do you have anything else to say, Martin?
So I would reciprocate with that, Alice, and I would give the opposite side of the equation, which is if you find someone like Alice who's willing to reverse mentoring you, and you're willing to challenge your thinking, then absolutely do it, because it'll be a very sometimes difficult and challenging, but rewarding experience. That would be my feed forward for people that were thinking of doing this.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Martin, for this recording, and I'm really, really excited. I can't wait to share this with others. And I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. I'm really looking forward to continuing to work with you and your team, and of course, just sharing all these experiences with people, and making our campus and working with people a more pleasant thing for the community. Would you like to share with us where we can find you, or any social media contacts?
So my principal social media contact is via LinkedIn. So, I do post a lot of materials on LinkedIn around the activities of the Institute, but also some of the initiatives that we have underway that we've kind of been mentioning in our conversations. That a number of those would be on my LinkedIn page, and that's Martin Dougherty. If you do that search on LinkedIn, you will find me quite easily there.
Thank you. For our listeners, thanks for tuning in. Please follow us on Twitter at mentor_podcast, at mentor_podcast, where we'll let you know when we have new episodes being released. You can listen to us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and any of your favorite podcast provider. You can reach us by email. Please send us comments and questions to inquiries@yourdigimentor.net. And as always, information on this episode will be in the description box, including how to connect with our guests and also links to more information and resources. Our goal for this podcast is to be shared as a resource, so please remember to tell people about us. So thanks again, and see you in our mid-season episodes coming soon.
This episode is also supported by the Wellcome Sanger Institute. It undertakes large-scale research that forms the foundations of knowledge in biology and medicine. It uses the power of genome sequencing to understand and harness the information in DNA. The Sanger's discoveries are used to improve health and to understand life on Earth.